Welcome to my podcast. This is a podcast for my honors capstone research project where I will be talking about murders and crime and the history of crime. My name is Addie Burt, and welcome to It's Killer. This is my first episode, and today we'll be talking about the D.B. Cooper hijacking. This is a plane hijacking that took place in 1971. And to start, I'll just give you a big little overview, and then we can dive deeper into it. So on the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper approached the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. He used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Flight 305 bound for Seattle. He appeared in his mid-40s wearing a business suit, and once on the plane, he ordered a drink while the flight was waiting to take off. A short time after 3 p.m., he handed the stewardess a note indicating that he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him. The stewardess did as she was told, was handed a case by Cooper. Cooper showed her a glimpse of a mass of wires and red-colored sticks and demanded that she write down what he told her. Soon after, she was walking up to the captain's area, and she gave the captain the note and said that he demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. The flight later landed in Washington as was planned, and the hijacker exchanged the flight's 36 passengers for the money and the parachutes and kept several crew members on the plane and took off again, this time set on course for Mexico City. So somewhere between Seattle and Reno, a little after 8 p.m., the hijacker decided that it was his time to leave, and he jumped out of the back of the plane with a parachute and the ransom money. The pilots ended up landing safely, but Cooper had disappeared into the night, and no one knows where he went. So there's a little bit of obvious mystery around this because nobody knows where he went. They don't know if he survived. And the weird thing is they found the ransom money that he had taken was on the ground in a little rotting package. It was found by a little boy in 1980, which only the package that he found that was gross was all $20 bills, and it was $5,800 in all. And the ransom money, they used a certain serial number in the 20s that they gave Cooper, so they would be able to track where he spent them, or if they, in this situation, if they found them, they'd be able to know this was Cooper's money because this is the ransom money serial numbers and the dollars. Found this from a little boy who was I found this in the woods. There are theories surrounding this hijacking that Cooper landed safely and he left some of the money. And then there's other theories surrounding this that are he crash landed, the money fell out, that he's dead, he died on impact, he never would have made it. And so I'm going to tell you some more facts, and then we'll see if y'all come to your own conclusions or if I suddenly have a big gotcha moment and think I figured it out, which I probably won't. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first bit of information we're going to jump into, or I guess in this case jump back to, is when the FBI learned of the crime in flight, and they immediately opened an investigation that lasted many years. They called it NORJAC for Northwest Hijacking, and interviewed hundreds of people, tracked leads across the nation, and even secured the aircraft for evidence. Eventually, around the 5-year anniversary of the hijacking, they had considered over 800 suspects and eliminated all but 24 from consideration, which obviously is a big number. So one of the suspects that had the biggest similarity and that fit the story completely was Richard Floyd McCoy, and he's still a favorite subject to this day to people that delve back into the case and that look at it again. He was tracked down for a similar plane hijacking and escape by parachute less than 5 months after D.B. Cooper's flight, but he was eventually ruled out because he didn't match the physical descriptions that had been provided of Cooper by the flight attendants. And for other various reasons, he was also ruled out. But this has been argued because people are, like, in shock, or if you're in stress like that, like, by the flight attendants, they dramatized, or they, like, he might have been the same. But you can look up pictures of both of the men, and I don't know. I don't think there's much similarity, but that's to be debated. Okay, so I know I hinted about the 5-year-old boy finding the briefcase of $20 bills with the matching serial numbers in 1980. But this theory that ultimately leads to Cooper didn't survive and he threw the case down and it was lost. But this theory was disturbed by the eruption of Mount St. Helens in May 18th, 1990, which was the little boy found the money in February, and then the eruption of Mount St. Helens happened in May, which the eruption likely destroyed any remaining clues that could have remained in the surrounding area, leading to Cooper's case. Another fact that is, over the years, many have confessed to being Dan Cooper, but the FBI has examined some of these cases and nothing turns up useful. They check the fingerprints for those who confessed against the unknown fingerprints collected from the hijacked plane, but none of them end up matching. So it's honestly a bunch of dead ends. And I don't know why somebody would confess to being a hijacker, but if that's your thing, that's your thing. Also, another theory, or I guess in this case, another fact that really gets theorists going is that in August 2011, Marla Cooper claims that Dan Cooper was her uncle L.D. Cooper. Marla claimed that she overheard a conversation saying that their money problems were over and that they had hijacked a plane. Somewhat contradictory, however, she also explained that no money was ever recovered since her uncle lost it when he was jumping. Although people have identified Dan Cooper as one of their long-lost relatives, Marla Cooper's claims seem to be the closest to the truth. So therefore, people theorize that one of the flight attendants also identified L.D. Cooper. We don't have a significant match when it comes to this claim. The authorities don't deem it likely, and while people might like to theorize about it, it is not considered a stable claim in retrospect. I got a couple more facts to spit at you before we can discuss. So in July of 2016, the FBI officially announced that they would no longer be allocating active resources to the D.B. Cooper investigation. And note, this happened in the 70s, and they were still allocating resources to it in 2016. Obviously not as many resources as they had been allocating, but it's still something to be said of the fact that they were still putting resources towards this, but I won't get into that. The FBI officially announced in 2016 that they would no longer be allocating active resources to continue D.B. Cooper investigation. This did not mean that they had solved the case with Cooper's identity, obviously. A leading theory of investigators is that Cooper did not originally survive his fall, and although his extensive knowledge of plane systems initially led police to believe that he was a professional skydiver, they have since concluded that he had jumped in such weather conditions that were ruthless in Washington, and he also jumped in the middle of winter in Washington and out in God knows where also. He was wearing business casual attire that no risk an expert would be stupid enough to take, and the fact that the bag matching the ransom money was found in a stream further reports that the theory he did not survive. So despite 45 years worth of tips and theories, nobody knows who this guy was or why he did it or anything about him. He was a civilian who had extensive plane knowledge, and if he had all of this plane knowledge, why would he end up jumping into the Washington wilderness in the dead of winter with business casual attire on and only a bag of money? So there's something to be said about other theories that are he had someone waiting for him and he had people nearby that were able to pick him up, which leads other people to argue about how true this could be, just because of the fact that he was in the middle of Washington wilderness. This is the 1970s, where I can't track you. I don't think you can track on planes anyways. I'll have to fact check that, but I don't think you can track on planes. This is me editing, and airplane mode does not disable GPS, but it turns off location sharing online. Needless to say, this was a time where they couldn't do that, and they had to rely on calling somebody or transferring via word of mouth. Not to say it was the ancient times, sorry, but recording this on my iPhone is a little bit of lapse judgment. But there's just no realistic way that he could tell somebody exactly where he was going to be and how they could get to him unless he had tracked the flight path, because he's the one that originally requested that the flight path be changed when they landed in Seattle and dropped off all the passengers to New Mexico. So unless he had specifically planned this out and had made plans with somebody to meet him in a certain place and he had tracked it, if he had been even the slightest bit off on that map when he tracked it, they would never have found him. And that's to say, if he survived at all and he had a getaway car somehow, that somehow he would have survived. But I think it's unlikely. Most professionals think it's unlikely also that he ever survived this jump. So now we're going to get into more of people who are trying to solve this via theories or other methods. So this guy named Eric Eulis is still searching for clues. He was only 5 when the DB Cooper hijacking occurred, but he is now in his 50s and he has spent countless hours searching FBI documents and for anything federal agents may have missed. He resonates with Cooper's story and says it, quote, gives off a James Bond-esque element to it, unquote. He keeps a notebook that is next to his bed in Arizona just in case a thought strikes him in the middle of the night. He is so committed to this. He is pursuing a lead relating to Cooper's clip-on necktie, which was left behind on the plane, and believes it could possibly help amateur sleuths like himself figure out who Cooper was. So he's also suing the FBI as of September 2023 to try to get access to the necktie, which has been seen as a bit extreme, but he is very committed to the cause. He also runs a CooperCon, which leads a search through the woods to find out whether DB Cooper could have survived or not, and describes himself as a crime historian and aviation geek. So he has come out with many articles on the discussion. He held his CooperCon in 2018, and people gather to discuss elements of the case in bigger detail, and he leads a volunteer searchers in the area of Tina Bar by the Columbian River. So there's also a lot to be said about where he is choosing to search. Most people have come out and said that there's no way he could be there, but other people have said that's the exact area. I don't really know personally, but people claim to see that he has looked through the case too much and he's overthinking it. But he's moving down the river because the money was found in a stream by that 5-year-old boy in the 80s. And also you have to move downstream because of the Mount St. Helens eruption. There's just no way that there's any evidence left around that area. And if it is damaged beyond repair. You may be able to find some residual evidence, but it is very unlikely. And most people have played that out, that there's just absolutely no way that there's anything left there because he was too close to where the eruption occurred. Ulysses also claims that Cooper's cigarette butts were initially recovered but later disappear, and he claims this is a crucial piece of evidence that may have been lost given today's advancements in DNA technology, which also comes to say something about the time and how we weren't advanced back then when it came to DNA testing. This is something many people who deal with crime have talked about, how if we had only known these things, we may have been able to track down these people later, and if they were kept, there could have been some more things done considering the advancements that have been made. But going back to the necktie, the necktie and the ransom money are the two pieces of physical evidence in the case that are very important, according to Ulysses. And the FBI has already tested the tie for traces of DNA, and according to Ulysses, he believes the tie knot has a metal spindle that may still have undiscovered DNA on it. This is also something people claim is a reach for Ulysses, because people believe that he's just trying so hard to figure this out, and he has delved so deep into this case. Like I said a second ago, they believe he's overthinking. He really just wants to solve it. And I admire his dedication, and I believe that, go off, because, I'm making a podcast about true crime right now. So there's something to be said about that also. Back to Ulysses and his filed suit against the FBI to access the tie, where he says DNA is being forgotten about. It is stored in FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., and in his suit, Ulysses claims that a DNA expert should be allowed to collect swabs from the metal piece that's in the tie that could hold the most DNA. He said he would rather enter any DNA found into a genealogy database in hopes of finding a match that would unravel Cooper's identity. He's very zeroed in on this bit, and Larry Carr, who is a former FBI agent, also worked on Cooper's case, and tells reporters that he doesn't believe the FBI took the spindle apart to process it, but whatever DNA found on the tie may have been compromised at this point, because it has just been around for so long and it was never collected and handled by today's standards, which is also something to be said about the advancements made in DNA, but also the neglect that had happened back in the 70s, not out of sabotage, but out of just pure unknowing. They didn't know that everything needed to have gloves on, and they would let people onto crime scenes while still being actively investigated. So evidence may have been tampered with, moved around. There might have been other DNA on it. It might have gotten washed off. We don't really know. And unfortunately, those are just some of the things that we're not going to know, because there wasn't that same standard that we have today. Some old FBI researchers that worked on this case do believe that anything is possible, though, and that should Ulysses win his suit, then maybe there might be something recovered, but they highly doubt it. According to other researchers and news, that the FBI has denied his request to attempt to lift DNA sample from the specific part of the tie. Mr. Ulysses later claimed that the deceased Pennsylvania man was Cooper, and that based on parts of DNA that the team of scientists lifted in 2009, he says those parented particles came from a Pennsylvania metals company that produced titanium materials and found on the tie. Ulysses says his suspect worked with those metals and traveled routinely to Seattle for work with Boeing on aviation products. So his suspect remains unnamed because he has never been charged or accused of the crime by authorities. This is just one man's theories of who it could be because of the metal that was in the tie, and that this man happened to go from Seattle on Boeing a lot for work, and this is just where he needed to be. A lot of people have downplayed this theory, while others have taken it and run with it. It's just how it works with cases this old. There's more to be said about that, about how the old cases just more people just keep going, and it's just how it works now. So that now that Ulysses has been denied his access to the tie, there is nothing more to be done, honestly. There's people that could end up getting access to the tie, but as I said, it could have been compromised by now because it just has not been maintained at today's standards. But people like Ulysses tried to keep it fact-based, and they quote-unquote say they will not give up, and a simple explanation is usually closest to the truth, unquote. So they may continue their search with CooperCon. According to the CooperCon actual website, there are dates in 2024 where they will be having events to talk about it. And they talk about the Netflix documentary, which is DB Cooper, Where Are You? And they just discuss what could have possibly happened and how he may still be able to be found. There's also something to be said about this man obviously could have died on impact, or if he had lived, he appeared to be older, so he could have passed away by now, but that is also unlikely. So you could still go to CooperCon, I guess, if you really like this episode and you're really into CooperCon. But I will leave most of the theories to y'all, and you can see for yourself if you want to delve more into this case, or if it just intrigues you so much that you want to listen again, then you're more than welcome to, and go back and connect any of the dots and any of the pieces I've laid for you. It is all up to you, and there are more theories out there that get more radical as you obviously go deeper into the internet and such, so I will leave it up to you, and y'all can make your opinions. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of It's Killer. Thank you for listening.